I acknowledge that, doing campaigns that are shot on mobile phones, it's very popular. All the platforms that the content's being shared on are made for that. So I've even had, the conversation with our team that like we should not be above shooting stuff on iPhones if we need to. And I think there's still a lot of ways as a video production company to inject our own kind of angle and our own production value to it.
Welcome to Video MBA, the podcast where we dive deep into the dynamic world of video production and explore the art and business behind the lens. Roll it.
Hello all, and welcome to another video podcast here on Video MBA, where we interview the market leaders in the world of video production. Today, we've got Glen Carter, the president of 5 Pound Media. Glen provides insights into his journey in video production and the evolution of his company, 5 Pound. You'll hear about his initial struggles on the right business model, whether or not to use in-house hires for creative roles or out-of-house talent, and what led to a pivotal realization that helped grow his business. We also talk about why partnerships, revenue sharing models, and maybe even original content creation may be in the cards to help him stay competitive in the future. This is a great human, authentic interview that I really enjoyed doing. And for you ambitious video pros out there, some great learning lessons. And so without further ado, I bring you Glen Carter. I'm here with Glen Carter. Glen, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Paul. Pleasure to be here.
Where does the podcast find you today?
We are in Montreal in the St. Henry neighborhood, and we're currently actually in our small studio space behind me.
Oh, there you go.
Yes.
I know 5 Pound does photography as well as videography, so it almost looks like a photo studio a little bit there too.
It's a bit of a hybrid. Like, we moved into this space about 2 years ago, and we needed a space that we could do photography as well as video, a space for us to throw up backdrops and use production flats when we needed, as well as stage more lifestyle type of settings, if you will. So it's kind of our attempt at an all-in-one studio for us, and it's worked out well so far.
So is your origin story photography first before you got into video, or was it the other way around?
I think technically it was video, although my interests in them probably started around the same time. But growing up in my household, my family was very big on home videos. So, not to age myself, but growing up late 90s, early 2000s, home videos were very popular. So we always had a high 8 camera lying around the house. And I also grew up with a love for skateboarding and music. So in my early teens, I started to take out that old home video camera with me and my friends, and we started filming skate videos, really just our kind of day-to-day life. And then from there, that kind of evolved into producing music videos for different artists here in Montreal. Honestly, it was a very organic sort of journey for me into doing more and more commercial work. It just sort of developed over time, and all throughout school, high school, cégep, which we have here in Quebec, and university. And I was pursuing other things, but video and photography were always sort of in the background as passionate hobbies of mine.
So, Glen, how did you what sort of inspired you to go from the hobbyist with the high 8 camera or the little film camera and actually try to go out there and earn some money? I assumed you started maybe freelancing first before you formalized something, right?
Yeah, especially doing music videos in Montreal, at least. They were very much passion projects, kind of side projects throughout all of school. And when I got to university, I always had, well, without getting too deep into it, I always struggled finding direction academically. So when I got to university, I knew one thing, and it's that I had a passion for entrepreneurship. And that's obviously, that can come off as very vague, but I think growing up in my family, a lot of my extended family, my uncles, they're all entrepreneurs. And I think that that life and that kind of pursuit always really interested me. So I actually went on to study finance in university. And when I graduated, I realized I had no interest at the time to actually work in any sort of corporate finance field or industry like that. And I always had this video and photography business on the side that I'd been kind of just building organically, and, even just pursuing personal projects at the time. And so when I graduated from university, I simultaneously moved out. All of a sudden had all these expenses to take care of. So I figured, okay, well, maybe I'll start working full time under 5 Pound Media, which had been a name that I'd sort of come up with my business partner randomly when we needed a name to bill under. So very very random sort of name, but it's stuck with us well over the years. So I kind of on a whim decided I'm going to do this full time and just make it work. And about 6 months later, my longtime friend and now business partner Riley left his job and joined me. So, at the time we were just doing what we could to scrape or drum up whatever business we could, and not related to video at all. But one of my first contracts I remember was creating a logo for a family friend, and I think he might have paid me $200. And I honestly had no idea what I was doing, but I figured it out. And I think I also then figured out that, you know what, I better stick to just video and photography production.
So you so what was the first thing you did? You just went out and built a website. And how did you land some of those early clients when you really didn't have, let's call it a quote unquote professional demo reel yet?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think in almost the old school way, I kind of hit the pavement and just put myself out there and tried to network and create connections where I could. Having my side business over the years helped me sort of hit the ground running. So when I decided to go full time, I had already had, a few kind of commercial contracts under my belt. I already had a bit of a portfolio that I could leverage. And one of the first key relationships I made was actually with a design agency called Harvest. Actually, I'm wearing one of their hoodies now. We're still good friends with them. And Brandon from Harvest was starting his business at the same time as I was. And so we figured at the time, okay, well, I need a website that can host all of my work and portfolio and tell people about our agency. And he needed video content at the time. So we did a little exchange of services. And honestly, our relationship kind of flourished from there. We were able to kind of really expand each other's networks based on who we individually knew. And I think from there, I met a lot of great people, a lot of great business owners who were, video at the time, I think, was still a bit of an unknown thing for a lot of businesses and brands. So yeah, it's a lot of networking, obviously not door-to-door sales, but just, yeah, reaching out, going to events, kind of telling people what we do. And eventually that kind of came back around to us.
What part of the your love or passion for entrepreneurship helped you, do you think, when you needed to get out there and start hustling? And what I mean by that is, quite often in our business, the production companies are run by creatives, and hustling for those first customers often is completely out of the comfort zone for some people. Was that the case for you, do you think, or did that early sort of love of entrepreneurship help you push past that?
I think it helped me push past it, honestly, and I feel very lucky for that. Also, I didn't mention, but I had a pretty crazy summer job the summer after I graduated university, where I was basically doing door-to-door sales. So I really think that helped me just learn how to deal with people saying no, or yeah, I think as crappy as that job was, there was a lot of character building and a lot of good experience that I got out of it. So I think, at the time, things like being, just being resilient and kind of always pushing forward. And, a reason I mentioned that I had kind of moved out at the same time of starting this business, I think in hindsight really worked well for me, because I'm very much the type of person that needs, I'm sorry if I can't say this, but I kind of need a fire under my ass, especially at that age. And I think knowing that there wasn't really an option to fail is what really pushed me in those early days to just figure it out. It may not be everyone's style, but that's why, I was taking on logo projects at the time. I was doing just whatever I could, events, weddings, music videos, and I would just try to really just make it work. And then over the years, obviously, as I built up my portfolio and we kind of gained a few, I guess you could call them tentpole clients, that allowed us to really refocus our energy and our work into what we're good at. But yeah, early stages, honestly, was just resilience and kind of mentally getting over the mental hurdle, I guess, of just reaching out to people, going to those networking events. It sucks. At least I think so, but you got to do it, and you never regret it after you do it. It may feel like a drag to have to get up and go to those things, but honestly, small things like that is what has paid off the most.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to ask you about some advice that you might have for up and comers. We'll get to that in a few minutes here, but why don't you talk to me about some of the early speed bumps, or maybe they were potholes in the road that you may have come across in the early days there that cost you a lot of time, or worse yet, cost you a lot of money. Can you describe any of those things that, God, if you look back now and you wish you would have forgot about that or done something different?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, there might be a few events. I think the biggest one we struggled with early on was how we wanted to scale our business. So we were interested in scaling our team, which our approach was to, take on more clients, more contracts, and hire out the people basically to execute on those contracts. And at the time, our focus was really to hire in-house, at least, directors, different people on the creative team that would come and work full time with us. And I think what we realized was having these individuals come in and say work 40 hours a week on the same clients, the same projects. We kept hitting this like about 1 year or 1.5 year mark where they would get creatively fatigued, as I like to say, and then want to go off and do more freelance work or just pursue personal projects. And I think creatively, when you get into a groove of working on the same projects over and over again, the grass is always greener. So we spent a lot of time hiring people who would then kind of pick up and leave a year later, and then we're almost felt like we were starting from scratch. And I think the big solution for us, we still hire those creatives in house, but we're a little more flexible if it's a part-time deal or if they're just freelancers that we outsource to. But in-house, we've really focused more on hiring out management, so project managers, producers, coordinators, stuff like that. So that was an early hurdle, was realizing, and that's not, that's my experience. Obviously that might not be everyone's experience, but that was a lot of time and money to figure that one out.
The money, I assume, was in paying full-time salaries to these folks.
Yeah, paying these people and spending the time and money to onboard and train them. And it makes sense in hindsight now. Like, we may take on a certain project, and if we have an in-house director, he might be really good at working on a certain type of project, but if he's in-house, he's expected to work on everything, uh, on all the projects we do. So I think it's allowed us almost to cherry pick our teams a little more efficiently on our end now, because we have so many relationships that are still long-term relationships, but they're only on, let's say, a part-time basis or on a per contract basis. And in the meantime, we don't have to pay them or figure out what they should be working on when they're not on productions, and they can go off and work on other contracts and kind of feel fulfilled creatively doing whatever they want to do, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
It absolutely does. So how has your role at 5 Pound sort of evolved over time? Like, what did it start with? And I assume it's everything, including cleaning the bathrooms. And what does that look like today? Like, specifically describe your role there.
Yeah. So, I mean, today if I had to define my role, I would definitely be a producer. In the beginning, like you mentioned, I was doing everything alongside with my business partner, and Riley's really he's more of a director and DP, so he's much more hands-on in production. So early on enough, we'd kind of realized our roles and strengths here, and that Riley should be more hands-on and actively working on productions, and I'm more on the producing end, setting up deals and budgets with the clients, you know quarterbacking pre-production and all those efforts, putting together crews. So it was very organic based on our skill sets and just how the business grew. It was very organic for us to realize that, like, I need to be more in the producing end and he needs to be hands-on in production.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes perfect sense. So how is 5 Pound, how does it stand out in the market? Like, what is 5 Pound sort of core selling point about itself?
Yeah, I think, it may sound like a small one, but early on, I think how we stood out, especially in a field and industry that's all creatives, is that we focused on providing like a really great service. So it sounds like a small thing, but being, a good team player, being dependent, people that can depend on you, you know, sticking to timelines and really being organized with how you're managing these projects, I think that early on is what kept clients coming back to us. And, maybe it's specific to Montreal, but we had a lot of success just from word of mouth. So I think through doing that good work and being organized and people knew that they could depend on us, I think early on helped us gain new clients and stand out. And the reason why I say that is more just from my personal experience. I think there's a lot of great creatives out there, and sometimes the piece that they lack is the sort of organization side. And to no blame, I feel like you need to balance both, but I do find that, especially with my business partner Riley, we were really able to divide those roles and kind of conquer, and I was able to focus on, just over communicating with the clients, even making sure that they're happy with everything and that we're kind of on track. So as well as obviously, doing quality work, I think we approach every project we do, we try to inject as much creativity as we can, even if the requirements or needs aren't necessarily the most creative or inspiring. So yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if that answered your question, but
It does. It does.
yeah.
Even today, though, I mean, and this is a challenge a lot of production company owners face, is sort of, how do you stand out today? And today is, late 2023. How do you stand out in a crowded market, Glenn? How does 5 pounds stand out today?
Yeah, today, I think, it's a tough industry because there's such a wide spectrum of people that can do what we do, especially today. You can have somebody's nephew that can shoot video for free. You have freelancers, obviously. Now you have content creators, UGC influencers that are kind of coming into our space now, which I think is very interesting and exciting. And then obviously you have big ad agencies. So I feel like we've really stood out as a balance between providing like really high quality, what we call like cinematic work for commercial business, whether it be B2B or B2C. We work in all different industries. And I think we've really kind of carved out a nice segment of the market where small or medium sized businesses can hire us, and they know that we can deliver really high quality work that fits within their budget and their business model. Other than that, we're constantly seeking out new types of partnerships and business models. So whether it be retainers, or even developing like sponsored content or our own original content. Even more recently with e-commerce businesses, we've explored some kind of revenue sharing models, which I find to be really exciting. So I think that's how, again, I apologize if I haven't answered the question, but that's
You
how
have.
we've kind of tried to adapt and stand out.
Yeah, you're actually one of the first that we've talked to that have explored some of these other ways of making deals. So you said you've explored some original content. I assume you've got some plan cooking there to monetize that.
Yeah, we're still in pre-production phases, but I think, being working full time now, I think it's been 7 years we've been in business full time. We've obviously seen the market and we've seen our industry change quite a bit. So I'm always trying to think ahead, especially with a lot of these creators entering the space. How are we going to stay competitive as an agency and like you mentioned, like stand out in a crowded market? And I think that coupled with just the personal interest and passion we have for maybe creating our own work that's not client work. We've been doing client work for I mean myself over a decade now. So it's sort of a conversation that we've been having over the last year, just internally with our team. Like it'd be really great to come up with something that we're excited about, whether it's a video series, it could be really anything. We didn't really tie ourselves down to any specific type of content, but we had the desire to create something original that's completely managed and directed by us with the intention to monetize it, maybe get it sponsored. Who knows? We don't know that piece just yet, but that kind of excited me because it sort of has opened up a new world of like, okay, well, we could, if we land on something good here, if we develop an interesting series and we pilot it and we're able to sell it somehow, it makes us less dependable or makes us less dependent on this client work that we don't know where it's going with creators, with AI. It's hard to gauge where our industry is heading. So yeah, to answer your question, that original content, it really was born out of a combination of like personal interest and passion in doing it, as well as exploring new ways for our agency to make some money.
hmm Also, really interesting to hear that you don't feel as though this UGC influx is a threat, nor I assume you feel that AI is necessarily a threat. Also, why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, so UGC is interesting. I do think it should be viewed as, call it, competition, because I think individual creators, especially they're new and probably unfamiliar to our world of video production. From what I've seen a lot of these creators undercharging for their work. But also, I think we'll see the pendulum swing back a little bit because we've lost, let's say, recently in my memory we've lost one or two contracts where the client came back to us and said, "Hey, this looks great, but we're actually going to do we're going to collaborate with influencers on this and blah blah blah." We've probably all heard this spiel at this point. But then I do think that the pendulum will swing back because these creators, I think a lot of them, if they're working alone, their business is not as scalable at the moment. I'm trying to figure out how to say this without sounding like a hater, to be honest.
And that's okay, by the way.
Let me that's it, because it's like I don't want to say like that their businesses won't last, but
The
I
output
think
is it maybe the outputs of their business may not have longevity.
I think so. That's a good way to put it. I think if we give it time, if we let them cycle through the market, we'll see some of those clients come back and get more professional video production done. And to be honest, we've even been looking at what we can do to white label those services, right? So like I acknowledge that, doing campaigns that are shot on mobile phones, it's very popular. All the platforms that the content's being shared on are made for that. So I've even had, the conversation with our team that like we should not be above shooting stuff on iPhones if we need to. And I think there's still a lot of ways as a video production company to inject our own kind of angle and our own production value to it, whether it's sound quality, lighting, set design. There's a lot, I think, that goes into making great content that's just beyond having a creator filming out of their apartment or whatever. So I don't see it so much of it as a threat as long as you're willing to sort of adapt to some of these new trends. Yeah.
And what about
Still
AI?
sort of thinking through that one, but I think that's where I'm at, is that like we're sort of taking it head on and seeing, okay, well, this creator style content that's performing really well, we could be doing that stuff, or we could be hiring out these creators and working with them on larger campaigns that otherwise they wouldn't be able to manage.
Mm-hmm. What about AI? Are you what are your thoughts on this generative AI having a place either as an additional service offering for you and £5, or do you see it more as, oh gosh, our time and professional production is limited here?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, where it's going to go and how it's going to affect our business in the long run. I think right now we're in a very interesting time because a lot of the tools, a lot of the AI tools that I've seen are more tools that we can use to make our work way more efficient. So there is a bit of a gap being created, I've realized, where even if we're doing e-commerce photography, in the past we would manually cut out images. It's very time consuming, and now with AI, it does a pretty good job in virtually no time. So for the client, what does that look like? Our agency, we typically bill on an hourly rate, but that type of work has to go more on value-based pricing now. So a margin on, if we're using e-commerce as an example, the margin that our business makes on a project like that is much larger than it used to be. Other things like, we produce a talk show called Hockey Inside Out, and it's a fully remote talk show, kind of like this. But again, we cut between cameras of like wide shots and then close-ups of the speakers. There's tools for that now that can go through and give you a line cut of the whole podcasts. So, but again, it's on the client end, they're still getting the same value. They're still getting the same product at the end of the day, same quality. It's just done much quicker on our end, so a lot less costs. So I recognize that won't last forever. Probably the market will kind of, and the clients and their knowledge on AI will kind of develop, and that gap will close over time. But I think right now that's is a big opportunity for a lot of creative agencies, not only in video production, but I think in all fields, in all service industries too. Long term, I can't really. It's hard to speak to that where it's going to go. I know it'll affect our business, probably in some negative ways, probably in some positive ways. But I think right now what we do is we look at like what's available to us today and how can we integrate that into our business.
Yeah, I agree, by the way, 100% with that. We're big believers in utilizing AI in our business, and we use it daily for a variety of different things. And for the time being, you're right. It allows us to speed up the process, allows us to make a little bit more money and service our clients better, right? So
Exactly.
as a crusty veteran, or maybe you're not too crusty yet, maybe not as much as me yet, but you've got 10 years, 7 to 10 years in professional video production. What kind of, advice do you have for those that are either graduating from film school, or maybe they're working a corporate job somewhere and they want to do what you did, turn that hobby into a profession? Do you have some, 1, 2, 3 top tips that you could give people that maybe you wish you knew when you started?
Yeah. I think when I started, I had a very ambitious vision of what I wanted for our agency. And I think in reality at the time, it was, we were trying to do way too much. So I feel like one of my big pieces of advice is, don't try to do too much in the beginning. Like focus and double down on what you're good at. If that's, hands-on videography, focus on that. And if you're not good at managing or producing projects, seek out partnerships that can help fill those gaps. Don't try to be a full service videographer if you don't have the skill set yet. I think naturally those things will develop over time. Another one, which I know you mentioned at the beginning, Paul, was to seek mentorship if you can. I think that's a big piece that I could have used when I was starting up. Just, you're going to have questions, you're going to have doubts, you're going to have moments where you're going to feel like you want to quit. And I think having someone that you can, bounce ideas off of, talk to, and be comfortable with, I think is really important at the beginning. A third one, and again, I said it before, it's not for everyone, but networking, I think you should do it. I think, especially if you're trying to find new clients, I do find it really pays off. Not to get into the whole buyer philosophy side of things, but I think if you've met someone at an event you've made a good impression on them, and a week or two go by and they're at their job or their business and they see an opportunity where they need to produce video content, they're going to remember you. They're going to remember your face, and you'll be kind of the path of least resistance. You'll probably be the first person they go to. So I do think networking, these days in person when possible, is really good. It's really effective. Other than that, be patient, dictate your actions and the relationships you make with, I'd say, a long-term perspective. Try not to think too short-term on things. And I think that can apply to many things, but specifically with decisions you make about your business and the relationships that you choose to make or even break, do that with a long-term perspective.
Oh, that's solid advice. Glenn, where can listeners find 5 Pound online if they wanted to check you guys out?
Yeah, 5poundmedia.com. You can check out our work there and learn more about us. If you want day-to-day updates, check us out on Instagram, 5 Pound Media. I'd say Instagram is the best one these days for us to see what we're up to. And yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, you've been a great guest. Some terrific insight there. That's Glen Carter. Thanks so much for being on the Video MBA podcast today.
Thanks, Paul. It was a pleasure.
And keep crushing it out there, man.
Thanks.